Hey YouTube, Rook here from Rook Geek Goodness, my little channel on the web for all things geeky and cool, and welcome guys to another action figure review. Rather, my first action figure review of 2020. I look back at all my videos for this year so far, and this is the very first action figure I've done this year. I'm going to be remedying that going forward. I have a lot of action figures in place that I'll be doing a lot of videos for in the near future. But what is this guy all about? What are we talking about in this video? Well, this video is going to be a little different than my normal action figure reviews. Normally that's a full breakdown. We're going to have the introduction, the breakdown, and final thoughts. That's how I normally do it. This is more of a first impressions video where I'm going to talk about this figure, what I think about it, crack it up, basically show the packaging, crack it open, get up close shots of it, and give you my kind of final thoughts that way of this figure. So a little history of this figure going forward right now. First thing is, this figure here was kind of spoiled back in the first quarter of 2019. A website broke that McFarlane gained the license from Mattel, or rather from a company called Spin Master. They originally required the entire DC license for collectibles from what I've seen from my research. Spin Master, I guess, took a piece of it off and gave it to McFarlane Toys to do action figures, at least in the 7-inch scale. And that to me is a concern, which we'll talk about further in this video, going to a 7-inch scale instead of the traditional 6-inch scale that we're kind of known from the DC Multiverse line. The DC Multiverse line was held by Mattel for many, many years, and that's kind of a concern that McFarlane got rights to this stuff. Now, they mentioned a second ago that it was spoiled that a website kind of in the first quarter of 2019 talked about this figure. They had packaging, they talked about all the figures in the wave, accessories, and people said, nah, this is just a hoax, this is just BS, it's not real. And I kind of been following this line throughout 2019. I did several streams talking about the McFarlane line coming out, and in 2020, which was about the second or third week of January, when this figure dropped as far as recording of this video goes, this guy appeared in stores and on retail markets and online. And there's a lot really to digest and unpack out of this figure. So first thing, before we do anything, again, this video's gonna run a bit longer than my traditional videos, about 10-15 minutes. First, let's take a look at the packaging before we do anything. Now, again, what is this guy all about? This is let's move him over to the middle here. This guy is the McFarlane Toys 7-inch John Stewart Green Lantern figure. There's a large wave of figures that are being released right now with different characters for the DC Multiverse line. Now, what is that all about? What is the Multiverse line really all about? It's characters encompassing all of DC. We're talking comics, TVs, movies. That's the idea of the Multiverse line, where they can come from all sorts of genres. This figure in particular was based off the Justice League animated TV show that came out, I believe, the late 90s, early 2000s. I could be wrong on the year, so please don't hold me to it. But this is a very stylized figure. It's a little bit different than our traditional Green Lantern figures that we've seen, especially in a 7-inch scale. So let's take a real close look up here of the packaging. You'll see an up-close shot here momentarily what this figure looks like. This, again, is a first impressions video. This is what I think of the figure in the box. The packaging is very, very cool looking. I like the way it looks. Nice presentation, nice window box display. You see all the accessories. You have a gun here, you have a card in the back. He has a figure stand, which we'll talk about because I think that's a good point and a bad point to really hit home with when we get this guy out of packaging. The side of the packaging here does say Green Lantern on it for Multiverse. You got the same thing happening here, DC Multiverse, right there would say Green Lantern. The back of the packaging is kind of the same image that you see on the card. Nice stylized picture of what John looks like from the animated series. I do like the way this looks. It looks very, very cool. And of course, they had other figures at the wave at the bottom here. There is a collect and connect, but John is not part of it. There's 3 Batman characters that are in place to build the Batmobile. It's the Bat Who Laughs. It's Batgirl, I believe, and I think Nightwing is there to put together the Batmobile. Very, very different sort of take for Collect and Connect. You put together a Batman animated item, and there's a Batman animated figure in this wave who doesn't have a piece of the Batmobile. So why that happens, I don't know. So let's get this guy out of packaging in a second. I'll put a cut in here, and we can pull him out of packaging and continue with this review. Guys, I kind of changed up how I wanted to shoot this portion of the video because I was going to shoot him much further back, but I needed to get in much tighter so you can see what this figure really looks like. And I have a lot of pros and a lot of cons about this figure. First, I put him side by side with the DC Icons John Stewart figure from DC Collectibles, only because you can see the idea of scale. I've mentioned that before near the beginning of this video. Scale is a very important piece of collecting action figures and to really play with your figures. This John Stewart here, again, is 6 inches in scale. You can see this McFarlane one dwarfs him in size. That's the only reason I really brought him out in the shot here, so you can see kind of what it would look like sitting side by side with this John Stewart figure. So we'll take this one off the turntable right now and really focus on this guy here. He's a really neat figure, a little bit different, very, very stylized, based on the Justice League animated cartoon series. They took liberty from, of course, the back of the inside of the back of the packaging, and some of the inside shots of it showcase the animation shot of what John Stewart looked like in the cartoon. You have a nice little data file which talks about John Stewart, basically a bio breakdown of the character himself from the cartoon. Decent accessory. I think they could have done a lot more with this, which we'll talk about near the end of this video. We'll focus on the accessories shortly as well. Let's really focus on John himself, because there's a lot really to unpack from this figure. A lot really going on. And the first thing you really notice is he's very stylized, as I mentioned before. Very, very thin and lanky. If you look at the legs here, they kind of even bow backwards. This figure absolutely needs a figure stand. He will not stand without a figure stand. It's very difficult to pose this figure. Just from first impressions alone, me really kind of playing with it only for a few minutes, this figure is extremely delicate. I really wouldn't even call him, quote, an action figure per se, and that's part of the problem I have with McFarlane Toys as a whole. As far as an action figure company goes, I'm concerned with the longevity of this figure, especially the legs. Let's really focus on what this figure looks like, the paint job. He's sporting his green and black paint job, your typical Green Lantern outfit with the white Lantern logo in the center. Love the head sculpt. Looks just like the John Stewart from the animated series. I mean, they did a really good job here with that, with the sculpt from going from the animated series to, in this case, plastic. Looks very, very good. Like the way it looks. The very solid paint throughout the entire figure. Again, green and black color schemes. Let's really focus on the articulation, because there was a lot of talk, a lot of chatter about the articulation, especially on my streams. People were talking about this being a 24 point of articulation on this figure, and they're showcasing it being 22 points on the packaging. I ran through this figure's articulation. I'm counting 20 points of articulation. Correct me in the comment section. I'm going to break them down point by point, what I think the points of articulation is. I'm probably wrong on it. Let me know in the comments. So head sculpt here goes up and down, and it will spin 360. We'll call that 2 points of articulation. The shoulders will spin 360. We'll call that another point. There is no articulation. Well, there's articulation right here. So you have this point of articulation. So you have 2, 3. You have a swivel. You have 4. And 5, you have a single jointed elbow. This elbow joint here is extremely tough. You got to break this joint in, and you can see it's kind of ratcheted here. You see the ratchets here, but it's not ratcheting. You don't hear it like doing a whole lot of clicking. It was doing it a couple minutes ago when I was breaking the figure in. You do have a spin and an articulated wrist joint here. Nice ring right there. Kind of, you can see it's sculpted in place. So let's break down this top portion of articulation and see what we got. So we have 2 points here. We had 3 and 4. We had spin 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm counting 12 points. Let's go through it one more time just to make sure my numbers are correct. 2, we have 3, 4 spinning, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm counting 12 points. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I think I'm correct there. 12 points. We have 13 spinning at the waist. You have 14, we have a rocker right there. The legs here are a bit of a concern for me because, as I mentioned, they're very, very spindly. They're very, very thin. If we move his arms up, you can just go to the legs here and they kind of bow backwards here. I don't know if that's mine or by design. So we had 13, we had 14, we have 15. The leg here, I'll go one leg here because this leg here, I spun it right off the joint. We have 15, 16, 17, we'll call it 17. We have 18, 19. We have 20, 21. I'm counting 21. 21 points is what I'm counting. I'm probably wrong, as I mentioned before. Correct me again in the comments section. But again, the legs here to me are very, very much a problem point of this figure because I'm concerned that these legs will not hold up over time. In, let's say, a month, a year, 3 years, 5 years, I think these legs are going to break very, very easily. They're very, very thin. He's very solid on the top, but very, very thin on the legs here. And that to me is a very, very problem point here. I think we might have had another point of articulation spinning it possibly. So maybe it's 22, possibly 23. Again, I'm probably wrong on that level of articulation. So please correct me in the comments section if I got it wrong, which I probably did. Now let's talk about his accessories. Again, he comes with a figure stand. This figure stand here is a single point figure stand, is solid. There's no writing on the bottom. I just checked it to make sure. And you need this figure stand for this figure. Again, he comes with his card. He comes with two other constructs. First, he comes with this thing right here, which is this headset. I'll take a picture of it so you can see what it looks like. This, to me, looks cool. I can absolutely see this thing getting lost. I'm very much concerned for it. I'm going to try to put it on him. I think this is how you put it on the figure. I'm having a lot of difficulty trying to put it on the figure because it doesn't really peg in place. I think it wraps around the back of his neck and hooks over his ear. But I'm probably wrong on how I'm doing this. This is how I'm guessing it works because it's like a mic. That's what I think it is. That's what it looks like to me. And you see me struggling with this thing already. Hopefully I'm not the only YouTuber that's having issues trying to put this piece in place. I'm guessing it's how you do it. I'll take a screenshot of how I think it looks so you can see what it looks like further. So let's take this off. I'll get a screenshot of this on him so you can see what it kind of looks like. It's what I think it looks like. Next is this massive construct gun. This thing is absolutely huge. Guessing it, if it goes, I'm going to try putting them both ways and see which way is right. I think this is the correct way. I mean, it looks like this should be the correct way, but I don't think it fits on that way. I think it fits on this way. This is how it fits. This is fitting on his hand right now, so you can see how it looks. It's a massive friggin' gun. This thing is huge on him. As I mentioned before, I have concerns with this figure. Him trying to hold this thing, I mean, he's about as best you could possibly get without him falling over. Looks cool, looks really, really neat, but it's very, 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 very big. Huge, huge gun. Looks cool, neat idea. If I was to make this figure kind of armchair quarterback, would I have made this accessory? Probably not. I don't think this would be a good idea for an accessory. Again, I don't think it fits one way from what I'm seeing here. If you try to put it in the other way, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't, yeah, it won't even hold really. You gotta push it very, very tough. You gotta really jam the figure, the ring, you gotta jam the ring into it here for it to hold, so it kind of will hold, but it feels more inclined to fit like this. This is how I think it's really designed to be fitted on the figure. Again, I'll take up close shots of this gun so you can see what it will look like. Looks really, really neat. And I think he does have his green eyes. He does in fact have green eyes, and I mentioned that before. Now let's talk about kind of where I think there's a problem with this figure and what I would have done to change it in the final thoughts of this video. Stay tuned, more video to come. Alright guys, my final thoughts for this first impression of the 7-inch DC Multiverse McFarlane Toys John Stewart Green Lantern figure. It's a neat figure, but I think there's a lot of cons outweighing the pros of this figure. I'm used to this DC Icons John Stewart figure, which I talked about in this sort of breakdown portion, this review segment of the video. I'm used to this type of figure, this scale. This 7-inch scale, I'm not used to. I'm not very comfortable with this figure as far as its scale goes because it won't fit in line with your other action figures that you have in your collection. To me, that's a big, big misstep. That's a no-no. If you're going in this sort of scale and you get this guy in, it doesn't work. It won't fit in with your figures. It's an oddball. It doesn't work. Next is I talked about the articulation a little bit. I kind of got hung up on it. I think it's 22, maybe 23 points of articulation. I could be wrong. Again, let me know in the comment section. I think the durability of this figure is the problem with the legs. As I mentioned before, I'll get the card out of the way here. The legs, I think, are the problem here where you need this figure stand for this figure to even stand properly is to me a bad direction that McFarlane took. They shouldn't have done that. It's sculpted very, very weird to basically have that feel of the Justice League animated series cartoon. That's the idea that this figure is kind of enveloping. I think the durability here is the problem where I've spun this leg right here, the left leg would be your right leg, already off this figure twice. So I don't think the durability is there. I think this legs and the way it's designed is going to break down very, very quickly. I don't think it's going to last as long as this figure here. It feels a bit hollow and a bit not really solid up top. That's at least just my personal opinion. It looks very, again, very, very bulky. I don't think this figure will last years. I don't think it's going to last the test of time. I think McFarlane took a bad direction making the figures like this. I think they should have taken the money, if it was my personal opinion, if I'm playing armchair quarterback, I would have taken the money from this right here and made this figure stand right here much thicker. Make it, you see how thin it is right here? I would have made this thing about this thick right here and had either a removable tray that slides out the back, or it will slide sideways so you can put this headset in. I had a lot of problems, you saw it in the breakdown, trying to get this thing on the figure. It's held by friction from what it looks like to me. It doesn't peg in place, it doesn't attach to the figure. That to me is very, very difficult. You saw me struggling so badly in that up close shot of this figure here. Another thing they could have done, if they wanted to really retweak this, they could have done something with this card, and I thought about this off camera. So imagine having a bigger stand, like off the figure stand here, so you can kind of see what it would look like side by side. I don't know if you can see how, the card's this big, the stand is about this big. I'll kind of hold it up so you can see what I'm talking about. If they made this figure stand wider, I think they could have slotted this card in and kind of incorporated this card into the design. They could have went in that direction as well. Something I thought about off camera. I thought that would have been a nice idea as well. If you wanted to keep the card, do more with this figure stand, give us more. The gun here, this massive honking cannon, you're not going to lose this thing. Very, very solid. Again, I had a little difficulty trying to figure out which way was the right way. I think the orientation is like this, not like this, because it really fits in well to his hand in this position as opposed to that position here. Again, this thing is going to be lost very easily. Probably the most sought after item I would say on the secondary market would be this headset. So I hope you guys do like my 7-inch first impression video, 7-inch of the DC Multiverse McFarlane Toys Green Lantern John Stewart video. Remember to click the like button at the bottom of the page, click the subscribe button if you like this video. Remember, if you subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon to be notified of my latest videos. And of course, last but not least, you can click the windows over here to watch more of my content. Take care, guys. See you next video, and bye-bye.